Dun, 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 dun.
The Idea Show.
We're here.
Yes, episode 4.
Episode 4.
We took a week off.
Nice hiatus. How was your vacation?
It was not a vacation. I played daddy daycare for the last week, so it was full time, one-on-one with me and my daughter. So that was a really cool experience.
Very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy that mom's back though. So
It's
mom's
nice to
watching.
share the load of
Yes.
the parental duties, of course.
Yes.
So with that extra week, we kind of got a little bit more time to research and think about good ideas, to look at viewer feedback and to take that into consideration. And here we are back for episode 4.
Yes.
We're starting an hour early today because of the Vancouver fireworks going on, so traffic's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So decided to start an hour early, and our regular scheduled time for the Idea Show, of course, is regularly on Wednesdays at
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure PST, yes, because Vancouver based, so we might as well do it out of there,
it
do
is.
PST. If this is your first time watching the Idea Show or the first episode that you've ever checked out, what we do here is we take great ideas, we take inspirational sources of ideas, and we throw them up on the idea board. We do what's called a SWOT analysis most of the time,
Yeah.
which is strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. And we generally just discuss different ways to both come up with and act on good ideas.
That's
And
right.
then we also try and connect with our live audience through the chat box. And so their suggestions, their feedback, their questions and comments, and work that into the show. So with episode 4, I guess we'll get it started.
Cool. Yeah. So over the last couple weeks, I've been checking out a lot of DIY channels online, and I thought that it sort of tied into the idea sex reference that you
I mentioned on previous episodes, where
right.
one idea and another idea get together behind closed doors, come out as a whole fresh new idea.
Exactly. So I found that DIY channels give a really cool perspective where you can watch a bunch of videos and apply some aspects of the videos to new and existing ideas that you currently have. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your ideas that combine and make new, fresh ideas. It could be your idea and other people's ideas, or a whole bunch of varieties of DIY channels, right?
So like your idea could be the piece that fits into someone else's creation that turns into an even better idea.
Right.
And by checking out these DIY channels on YouTube, you can get kind of an evaluation of what people are using to create. Because on your recommendation, I checked out a bunch of these channels, and I find that it was just a wide range of different stuff, from like food hacks to different things you can make weapons out of, to survival tools, to like just pranks even. Like there's a lot of creativity.
A collection, yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
Totally. And it also sparks new ideas as well, as mentioned. So it's something that I think if anybody puts a lot of attention to, you can check it out, and it's very inspiring, or at least it was for me. So
Yeah.
we're going to add some stuff on the description of the channel, so you can check out a bunch of the DIY channels that we checked out.
Yeah, we'll actually spend, I think, maybe like a minute or two talking about a few different ones, just because I think talking about not only giving people some idea of how to find these channels, because believe it or not, they're not easy to find in terms of if you just go to YouTube and start searching, DIY or life hack or whatever. Most of the top search results that come up are actually geared towards teenage girls, believe it or not. It's a lot of like makeup hacks and like things for young female adults, which is great if you're a young female adult or a teenager. Then by all means, that's great. Those are the first results that come up. But you have to do a bit more comprehensive searching to find some of the really useful ones that you showed me. So I made a little list of some of the better ones that I thought, including a lot of the ones that you showed me.
Yeah.
I thought we could spend like 30 seconds or a minute talking.
Yeah, of course.
different
Well,
ones.
the one that really stuck out was King of Random.
Definitely.
Which is a guy who has 4 million subscribers,
Wow.
Which is a huge number. I mean, when you think of subscriberships, I think it's 30,000 subscribers is then you start monetizing, or something along those lines. But the point is that this guy's honed in on, I mean, they're not, I wouldn't say all of them are applicable. It depends on what the type of person that you are, but it definitely sparks a lot of really cool stuff. But he does a really good job at breaking it down. So the production value of the show itself is step one. This is what I did to get this. I bought it at the Looney store for this much.
Yeah.
And you know, it really breaks down financial concerns. It breaks down a lot of really cool aspects that would prevent you from
being able to carry out whatever
an idea.
So. Yeah, I found with King of Random that, like you said, the video layouts are really good, so that it's he's almost foolproofing it in the videos. Like, you can still mess anything up.
Yeah.
But the instructions are so simplified and so like clear and concise that from the things that you've made, that he had, I'm pretty sure you made a couple of the devices that he talked about and showed, and you made them almost to spec, and they work perfectly, right?
Yep.
So like, that guy's got credibility to me because he not only shows you the basics and talks about the parts and why you use certain parts and gives you alternatives to different parts to use, but then shows you the end result, and then shows you the end result in action.
That's right.
So that you can see that it works. And because all of these DIY things require a little bit of investment of time, energy, and money. But the point of them, the point of like life hacks, are supposed to be like handy, advantageous things that you do to save yourself time and money, or that are convenient, or that are useful, or that recycle a lot of common goods around the house.
Yeah.
So I find that community is growing, and more creative minds are pooling their resources to come up with more. It's basically the DIY community is kind of growing, and I only discovered it on YouTube, where there's this huge collection of different channels that people have put forth. So it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, and again, we're going to share that with you in the description.
Yeah.
But, it sort of reminded me of a story. My buddy called me last week, said he checked out the show,
yeah.
The idea show, and he was saying how much he loved the idea, but more importantly, he says that he's super busy with a lot of different projects, and he would rather divvy out equity as a form of payment to people. And I thought that was very interesting with an idea.
Like equity in the idea,
right?
Or the result of the idea,
right? So in his case, he wanted to start a little side business, we'll say.
Yeah. And
this side business, he didn't necessarily have all of his time to be able to dedicate to the side business, but there was something there. And with his permission, of course, I would put it online. But again, it was something that reminded me of a new way of looking at business. So if you're working a 9 to 5, which most of us do, you're investing a lot of your time in one area. But if you're working little chunks in different areas, you've mitigated a lot of your risk, potentially, when it comes to earning most of your income from one source.
Yeah.
So we were both talking back and forth, and he was saying that the trend is becoming more of the fact that people are letting their businesses go quicker because the ideas are flowing, and they would rather invest in developing and creating more ideas and divvying it up into small portions.
Okay.
So
so smaller bites of more pies, basically,
right.
Rather than a big bite of one single pie.
Right. So if you combine that aspect with the decentralization of a lot of different currencies,
yeah.
You can come up with some really crazy ideas. And so I just thought that it was really cool to even just investigate that, because I think it's a tip of the iceberg right
yeah.
now, and there's all kinds of really cool things that are sort of fermenting and coming to surface because of the fertility of the landscape that's presented itself. The information is available everywhere, and it's quick, it's easy to access, easier to access.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because things like YouTube, which is coming up on 10 years of popular use.
Imagine life without YouTube.
Right? It's like it's been around for a decade, and it's become an integral part of so many people's lives, not just for communicating and for expression, but for sharing ideas. And things like the Technology Education Development Talks, the TED Talks, And even more than the TED Talks, the TEDx talks that are in multiple cities and kind of drill down and focus on more, I guess, not fringe subject matter, but less mainstream or popular subject matter. So those were some of the most interesting talks, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely spreads a lot of good ideas and gets people discussing subjects that they wouldn't normally have at the forefront of their mind.
Yeah.
But I think if you're getting to, yeah, they're like among some of the best TED Talks, you can talk about maybe the one, was it Patty Dobrowolski?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has a really good TED Talk. Draw Your Future, Take Control of Your Life is what it's called. But if you get a chance, check it out. She says, I don't want to ruin it, but she says there's 3 steps. You first have to think about it. You know, I'm probably going to mess this up. You have to first see it, believe it, and then
Act upon it?
Act upon it.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting because it's a lot of how the idea process that I've had happens, and I never really analyzed the idea process in and of itself, because you just think it's an experience and that's it, you know, and moving on.
Well, and a lot of times you don't remove yourself from the process to be external to it. You're too busy experiencing the process to get outside of it and go, oh, this is this step, and this is this step, and this is the struggle. And instead, it's just like, it can be a painful emotional process, or it can be a joyous, like springing forth process where it just flows out of you.
Yeah.
So everyone's creative process is different, but
Totally.
the end result seems to have kind of like a formula for success, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how to take an idea, make it tangible, plan it out, and then take action on it.
Yeah.
And then check in with it to make sure that it's going according to plan, I guess. Input, processing, output, right?
The truth.
Yeah, something like that, right? It's one of those methodologies for processing information correctly. But I thought that out of all the DIY channels that I had seen, one of the oldest ones that I was familiar with before Adam and I started talking about DIY projects was a channel called KIPKay, K-I-P-K-A-Y, and it's he does life hacks. He does lots of do-it-yourself. He does a lot of how-to videos. Couple of videos that explain like how certain stuff works. Like if you're not familiar with the inner workings of a lot of different things, from electronics to there's some social engineering stuff in there as well, which is really
cool
interesting.
stuff. Yeah.
Not necessarily because you want to use it on people, like there's prank type social engineering, but to me it's more useful to know that that exists to inoculate or insulate myself from being pranked or socially engineered.
Yeah.
Right? Because that with great awareness comes great power, or great, not so much responsibility with great awareness, but you're able to act in a more comprehensive manner.
Well,
you're more aware of different things that can happen.
That's right, and you're more able to step in if you see that somebody could be potentially taken advantage of, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, you recognize the hallmark, the patterns
Right.
of those things. And another good, so KIPKay is a great DIY channel on YouTube. There's also one called The Household Hacker, which is Household Hacker is more about food-related, kitchen-related stuff. There's a lot of lifestyle type hacks, so a lot of like stuff to do in your house, in your bathroom, in your kitchen. You know, ways to do food that you haven't thought of, or to do tools that you haven't thought of. So that's definitely worth The Household Hacker. Is there others that you've thought of, like the Italian?
Oh, the Crazy Russian Hacker. That's
yeah, Crazy Russian Hacker is a good one as well.
Ruloff Maker.
Oh, Ruloff Italian Maker.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's got a YouTube channel that I found was pretty cool. They each of these idea makers, or you know, they act upon ideas or whatever it is.
They have projects basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a project, there's a lot of ideas that you have to come up with along the way. Sure, the steps may be laid out, but there are ideas that are created throughout these steps, and that's the great part about doing these exercises. But they all have their own little flair on things, which I found is really cool.
Yeah.
They're really eccentric. Some of them are more eccentric than others. Some of them are pretty reserved. But you know, you get your favorite one, and you check out all the videos, and you go on a cool little binge, which we talked about today with videos, and episodes.
Video binging, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting phenomenon. If you want to digress for a second,
Yeah.
to talk about that.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine. We were discussing about the affinity with like why is TV suddenly bigger than movies? Why are people have more affinity again to TV than they do to movies?
Yeah, and 10 years, 20 years ago, people doing film
Yeah, it was more like
would never consider doing TV.
exactly actors who would do film wouldn't be interested in TV so much because that was like the lesser medium, right? And so we talked about whether it's like there's a creative wellspring and being able to tell fuller stories over a longer period of time, right? So you're taking your idea of a story and instead of having to compress it into like a 2-hour mold and sort of chop and change out of it,
create all these story arcs.
Yeah, to kind of fit that 3-act formula that with TV series like like House of Cards, Game of Thrones. I mean, a lot of these are based on books anyway, but they follow more of that book structure, which is like it ends up being more satisfying, longer arc with characters and plot because there's more time to tell it. You're not in a rush.
Yeah.
But the other thing that one of us mentioned was the fact that the new phenomenon that didn't exist even 10 years ago, other than having a TV show on DVD, is binge watching, right? And so what is it that binge watching? Well, the same actors are being involved in the same story, and you end up watching it for 8 or 10 hours straight.
A series, for example, like you just had mentioned, you would watch all these in a row. Basically, depending on who you are and your affinity to the characters and the trust that's developed with the characters in this storytelling process will determine, whether or not you're going to invest an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours binge watching, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like an information junkie with stories.
Yeah, you can totally get addicted to information or just novelty in general, right? But especially like engaging storytelling where good storytelling is unfortunately or fortunately, it's manipulative in terms of its ability to make you care about these strangers on a screen, right? And so part of that's creating the relatability, part of that's creating the engagement because there's an emotional level of engagement. There's the escapism, there's just the entertaining wow factor, right? So all these things can engage different aspects of people, but once they're engaged, then it's about keeping that attention. And so, whether they have to result in plot mechanics that are a bit like extreme, right? Like there's an episode of Game of Thrones where a guy like burns his child at the stake, you know what I mean? And just kind of watches. And you're just like, that's pretty messed up, you know what I mean? But everybody can't stop watching it. And actually, that's a good example. Lots of people did stop watching the show because they were like, that's too extreme. That's my limit.
In Game of Thrones, this happened.
Yeah. So I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. But there's
like spoiling it.
Well, just that it happens to a character and to another character. And the end result was that people actually disengaged. They were like, you know what? I'm good. I'm out. I don't need to see.
Well, the first real weird aspect was the incest, which is just kind of
like, I mean, that's specific to Game of Thrones, right? But in terms of storytelling and plot mechanics, right? You find that there is a lot of times they go to like an extreme, like a more extreme than just the traditional storytelling mechanics.
Sure.
Because there's 104 stories in total that can be told supposedly. And then you just start telling variations of those stories apparently. So to me, it's like writing in these different, more extreme plot mechanics.
That's pretty interesting.
Is to try and keep audience engagement.
So who says this? There's 104.
Look, I could be a different number. I remember.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. A friend of mine
curious.
who worked on a TV show, Smallville, gave me a document back in like 2005 that said, there's only 104 stories, and it went through the different archetypes of stories in like 2 sentences or less.
Wow.
So there's the 3 traditional stories: man versus man, man versus himself, man versus his environment, right? Man or woman, obviously. But those are supposed to be like 3 general themes for a story, but out of that, there's 104 story mechanic types, right? And outside of that, they're like, that's exhausted the level. this is a show about creativity, so I firmly believe that there's way more than 104. But that's like some.
What if you add 1 and 2? Does it?
Well, so we're talking about ideas, making sweet, sweet love to other ideas to produce new, fresh, novel ideas. And the one thing we haven't run out of, even though we were supposed to run out of all ideas in the year 2000, we seem to just keep getting more and more. And so it's almost like there's no limit to the creativity of the human brain. But what can happen is ideas can become homogenized, I guess.
Yeah, they can start losing their value in terms of, but like if you want to take ideas as, like we were talking about it before, it's sort of like where's the etymology to an idea?
Yeah.
And it's like an expression of a person, an art.
We hope you're enjoying our digressive tangents, by the way,
Yes.
Sweet audience. If you do have any comments or questions, then please
chime in,
join the chat box, and say hello if you'd like to let us know that you're there. Anyway, sorry not to pick up.
No, but it was interesting because I've always thought of an idea, and that's again talking about the definition of words, where we said if you ask 12 people about idealism, you probably get 12 different answers. So we all have our own sort of definitions to words. They may not be true, but my idea, I guess, or my perception on what an idea was, is always you see a problem and you create a solution to address the problem, and hopefully the solution is sustainable.
But yeah, I think what you're referring to is like if people don't have the same definition, then they're not going to identify a problem the same way.
Right.
Right. And a lot of times a situation or a dynamic develops that doesn't have an accurate label. Right. And so people don't know how to describe it or to articulate it, to know that it exists in order to be able to address it as an issue or a problem.
Sure.
So I think that's why it's important whenever you're dealing with any creative space or agreement or even contract, that you have to have those definitions. You have to know what the words mean to each other and agree on those definitions. Otherwise, like, you're just creating huge risk for miscommunication and people not to be like, oh, well, I thought you meant this. And you're like, no, I thought you meant this. And so assumptions and presumptions can often erupt into conflict, right? So that if you, even though it's not like a fun process to be like, okay, so what does this word mean to you? But if Adam and I spend 5 minutes talking about what idealism means to both of us, we might have different answers, but out of those answers, we might find like 30% common ground and then agree to make that kind of like the shared definition. And then we can move forward from that, right?
Makes sense.
So that's kind of how I would address the nature of making sure the nomenclature of your idea is universally accepted, right? A lot of people go to dictionaries, right? Dictionary.com or law dictionaries. Thesaurus is good if you want to have other words that mean the same as words that you're using or that have similar meaning.
Yeah.
Because it's boring to use the same word over and over.
Well, there are websites out there that will create lyrics for you. Just
create lyrics.
Yeah.
Wow.
There are lyric creators and idea generators and word creators and stuff. I checked it. I was on Tangent the other day and I checked it out, and it was pretty cool because from a marketing perspective, you can totally change up the words that you have a meaning to that have basically similar meanings to other words. So they're interchangeable, and it spices up the language. Or
how many times can you say amazing? That's so amazing.
Fantastic.
That's fantastically amazing.
That's unbelievably fantastically
no,
amazing.
it's not even believable. It's so amazing.
It's suspended disbelief.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you definitely have to take that into account, and you can't, like, we go through life every day making lots of assumptions because in a sense we do have words predefined for us, like by going to school, by having dictionaries, we do have a lot of words predefined. I think it's more the deeper definitions or the assumptions, presumptions, or implications of a word. That's where we take those for granted in terms of other people's understanding, because a lot of people can't even really, with today's education system, can't even spell or use words properly grammatically or use punctuation, let alone have a full and deep understanding of the weight or implication of words. So if you're going to compassionately communicate with them, then just kind of like be aware of that and be understanding so that you don't get hung up on it, and you're then able to move forward on an idea rather than getting stuck on the
Or let's table that
you
for
should
later.
use a comma instead of a semicolon.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because that might be true, but it's like, is it the most important thing to address right now? Maybe there's an app for that. But you made an interesting point, Adam, that with things like idea generators or things that can automate the creative process, that, in my opinion, almost works against the creative process, in the sense that by making it too easy, right, it almost takes the soul out of it. Like, okay, a good example, which is also a bad example, is GarageBand, right? It's a piece of software for the Mac OS X that both Adam and I love to use because we can just come up with music like really fast, right? And there's a somewhat automated process that you can engage in, or there's a fully manual like process where you need skills to do it. And we both played around with both sides, right?
Tinkered.
And I find that the more the music that I come up with or that you come up with that I enjoy more is the non-automated stuff. It's the more creative, because there's only a limit
like
to how many different
offbeat, but it's like
it's human and full of authentic. Often means full of mistakes. You know what I mean? That's just something that's authentic is like, oh, this is kind of shitty, but at least
so
it's
much
authentic.
room for improvement.
So much room for improvement. You could be so much better if you didn't use the shortcut tool. But so, it's not going to make us both instant awesome musicians. It's not going to bestow upon us greater musical skill. But what it does is it shortens the time that you can go from, hey, I've got an idea of something that's rolling around in my head, to getting it out of you and into a tangible thing. And then you can work and improve on that, right? Just like writing a book or a screenplay.
Yeah.
The first one or two that you do is not necessarily going to be the best because you're practicing. It's like exercise, right? You get better at it over time, but it takes like thousands of hours to master something. And so getting back to that point, if you find a shortcut past the creative process, then how are you supposed to master the creative process?
By finding the shortcut, because that's the creative process. My friend used to say
to me,
that
okay, so that's Adam's opinion, just to show we never fully agree. That's what you think. I think if you shortcut past the creative process, your creative muscles will atrophy because they'll be out of practice from being actually engaged. It's the difference between going out and exercising or stepping into a machine and having the machine exercise your body for you. And it's like, I'm so in shape because this
just
thing
put on this
moves
belt
my
and
arms.
you get six-pack abs.
Exactly. Or do you go
It
to
just
the
feels
work?
like I'm vibrating right now.
Do I have to change my diet? Nope. The machine does all the work for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's no quick shortcut. I agree with that 100%. I'm just saying, for example, my friend used to do phone interviews for employment positions, and a lot of these were contract.
So you're talking about efficiency tools like DIY, right?
Yeah.
Not shortcuts past the creative process.
No, but he would Google basically all the questions that they would ask him that were tough, and he would get flying reviews.
That's smart.
From and it's just an example, but the point is that there is no shortcut to creative thinking and idea generation. If you're an ideas person, that's something that you've developed into over a long period of time, and a lot of these DIY guys do a lot of these projects themselves, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other stuff they find online, which is cool too. But it's interesting that you say the muscles will have atrophy, because in a sense it's really true, because we were talking about it the other day. Some people really love the book, and some people really love the movie, right? And you can tell a lot about the individual. And you were saying, if you're reading a book, you're not going into the alpha state. Or
Well, if you're watching a screen, then your brain does kind of go into the alpha state where it's very passive and it's just taking everything in, and that's a function of suspension of disbelief.
like binging.
I don't think, in a sense, like, and I'm not a neurologist or brain expert, but I think when you go into alpha, you're more suggestible and less creative. You're not engaging the active part of your conscious mind necessarily. It's more of like passive, so that you can be emotionally engaged. Whereas when you're reading a book, the whole time you're not only logically, comprehensively taking in the words and grammatically analyzing them to get meaning out of them, but you're actually imagining
brain
the
is working.
description. You're imagining the landscapes. You're creating a visual inside your own head of what the heck is going on. So 1,000 people can read the same book and get 1,000 different kind of versions of what that book entails, Bible, and have a completely different take on what it really means, even though the words are the same. The words in the book are the same, but what that entails is based on your experience and environment and what you know.
That's right.
Magic spell. I guess spell on you.
We were talking about spelling today, and
yeah, well, the word spell.
That's right.
Tell me about it.
No, we learned spelling in school, right?
Yeah, casting spells. Word. What was that Alan Moore quote? You do get Alan Moore. Alan Moore, he's a big pit. He's like, words are just consciousness manipulation symbols.
Wow.
That's it. So yeah,
that's pretty powerful.
It's a way to look at it, I guess. But I'm just fresh in my mind is all these DIY channels and videos that you showed me.
Well, it creates that.
There's a lot of inspiration. So we'll talk about inspiration in well, now we're entering the second half of the show. So maybe we'll finish off the DIY list and then move on to like what inspires ideas and any other subjects if we want to throw up anything on the toss anything up on the board there. But what was another one on the list? Did I say the household hacker? Yeah. You mentioned Roelof, the Italian maker.
Yeah, he's cool.
There's one of the most easy to remember names of one of the orange themed DIY channel is called I Like to Make Stuff, and that guy is most of his projects you're going to need some kind of workshop like bandsaw or table saw. So there's some that the investment is very low in terms of just crap I got lying around the house. Hey, I'm going to combine a mousetrap and these things and some marker or whatever and make a mousetrap gun.
Yeah.
But the I Like to Make Stuff guy makes like tables out of pallets.
Yeah.
And different ways to take like materials that are still cost effective and outside of their normal usage range, but turning them into cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have a bleeper to take out the swear words, so apologies for the live. And you mentioned Crazy Russian Hacker.
Yeah.
The last one I'll mention of the DIYs before we move to our next segment is, and this is, take these with a grain of salt, but there's a guy who makes custom weapons, like taser fists, and like crazy weird stuff that I don't know if you'd ever want to actually make it, but it's called the Greek Gadget Guru. And his whole video channel is kind of a blue theme, like Greece. And maybe it's because of the economic collapse and like the anarchy that's going on in Greece right now. He's like got all these different crazy do-it-yourself weapons that you can create. So if that's your bag, then it's still a form of creativity, even though it's a bit destructive, not my cup of tea. It's still worth checking out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes. So.
Yeah, I just, before we moved on to the whole inspiring thing, I had a chat with a friend just recently with an app that he's created. And he was telling me all of the red tape that surrounds the app itself, which was really interesting.
Like trying to get the app to market or just creating the app?
And so like you could, he was saying you could dump, thousands of dollars into an app and it will not even be accepted by the iTunes store or
Android store,
the Android
Google store.
Yeah. So I found that really interesting too. Is how many people go up front and invest into an app without figuring out what the legal aspects of.
It's a lot of risk.
That's quite a bit of risk, but depending on what the reward is and the risk ratio will determine whether or not it's worth doing. But he's in the process of creating a really cool app. Of course, I can't say anything about it.
Oh, we're not going to swap the app? You know what we should do?
With his permission, I totally would. And he said he would actually come on a show.
Fair enough.
So maybe
we should swap the idea of creating an app.
Of
what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? No, just creating an app in general. Like you've got a great idea and you want to turn it into an app. Like
that's a tough one because the app itself would have to have a purpose. So like or an application. So
But see, I'm getting a little deeper here. Instead of a specific app,
don't create an app for the sake of creating an app.
no, you just mentioned all the red tape this guy's going through.
Sure.
So those are the weaknesses or the threats of just creating an app in general. There might be people watching this. Before I got a smartphone, I didn't know what an app was. I was like, I knew what an application or program was, but I didn't know that there was these simple programs you could run on your phone that could do all kinds of crazy stuff, like QR scanning and games and you know, pedometers and weight training and calculators and
lights.
exactly, button sounds and lights. It's a smartphone.
It's the internet on your phone.
This phone makes you a god. So it's, you know, it gives you all this power. I didn't know about that market. And then when I went on the iTunes store, I was just like, whoa, there's like too much stuff here. And there's like 50,000 games and like half of them are free, but you can like buy into them. So there's definitely a market. There's, you know, how many millions of smartphone users. But what you just said to me was news, because I didn't know that you're taking an enormous amount of risk just in creating an app if it doesn't clear these legal hurdles or liability hurdles.
So what he said is that you have to go with a firm that specializes in bringing apps to market. So
they can
he
jump
didn't
out
go into detail
legal
about what this
loopholes and
firm,
stuff?
yeah, where it was. I
Yeah.
think it was in Vancouver, but the point is that, you know, if we were to create the Idea Show app,
yeah,
maybe that's something we could SWAT.
Okay.
And no, the reason why I'm saying that is because there has to be a purpose behind the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat.
Yeah, but I was just talking, remember, SWATs can be done on any idea
You're right.
or concept. If I just wanted to say, let's SWAT the idea of starting a business, just the idea. What's the business about? Doesn't matter.
That's true.
SWAT the idea of, because we swatted the idea of the Idea Show, right? It was just a concept. So you can SWAT the idea of an app, of creating an app, right? The strength. Oh, this connects with a bunch of people. The weakness. Oh, there's a bunch of red tape to jump through. The opportunity. A bunch of people could buy the app and it creates a bunch of money and gives me money to start a new project. But the threat could be that I create an app that I didn't know there's already an existing app that covers the same market or niche, and now I've just made something redundant. Another, you know what I mean? And you can just go round and round with the idea of just what creating an app entails. Because I've seen some pretty cheesy, simple apps where it's like the app loads, you have 2 options, 2 buttons you can press, and each of them do a simple thing. And that app probably took the person like a couple hours to make, because the app development kit is actually not super complicated. But there's more complex apps that do a variety of things, right? I got a storyboarding app. Turns my phone into a little easel. So when I want to, say I've written a scene and I want to do a storyboard for it, it's got a bunch of tools that basically let me draw like Photoshop or use little cutouts,
Characters?
right?
People?
Yeah, cutouts for characters to put them in.
No.
Move the story, move to the next scene, move the little guys around.
What's that app called?
It's Celtx,
Okay.
CELTX. So I use Celtx.com for script writing and for my novel, because it's great in terms of having like your stuff on the cloud and then you can back it up locally.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, there's no Celtx storyboarding app that I've seen for the PC. It might exist, but I did find it for my phone. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can always email those storyboards elsewhere. You can copy and paste objects and stuff. So it's pretty useful for trying to visualize something. Does it work perfectly? No, it crashes sometimes if I have like too much drawing in the scene. So that's the other thing with apps. There's not a lot of accountability. Like there's been apps that I paid for that were broken, and somehow they got cleared to go on the app store.
So this is where I think the evolution of this whole app process is the fact that there's probably more pressure on these people who are allowing these apps to go through on their platform.
Yeah.
And saying that there has to be a certain level of accountability and
so quality control.
Sure, I mean it's not just a rating system like Reddit, for example. Speaking of Reddit,
yeah,
do you like that site?
I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit, because it is like Reddit is. It calls itself the front page of the internet. It does have lots of glaring problems, but it is the #1 user-generated, user-submitted content platform, right? So as a news aggregate, which is just a collection of links that are different submissions from users, it's like the first place that gets stuff. So like if somebody pastes something cool on Facebook, they probably got it from Reddit. If you see an article in the Sun of the Province that's local and a bit fringy, they probably got it from Reddit. Reddit's become the source for so many people's information and news.
Including newspapers.
Especially with newspapers. They're like slow news
They're
day, or they'll
trolling
troll Reddit in their local vicinity to try and find local things that are going on, because that's where people go to report stuff. Hey, I got a photo of this, check it out, throw it up on Reddit. What's the story behind it? And then you have all this discussion in the thread, and newspapers will quote that discussion as like, oh, this user said this. And it's like, so they're presenting people's opinions and claimed facts as news, and it's coming from a website where like everything's posted anonymously. You have no idea who anyone is posting on Reddit, like none whatsoever. You can, if someone admits who they are, then that's cool, and they have a verification process. If somebody does like an Ask Me Anything, which is like a big, it's an opportunity for like a celebrity or an artist or just someone who has some story to tell to basically present themselves on the Reddit platform, and all the users can ask them any question they want, and then they can pick and choose which questions to respond to. So obviously like thoughtless questions get ignored or voted down, and relevant questions or thoughtful questions get voted up. So yeah, it's a great platform. I think it's a great place to share ideas, to present new ideas.
What about starting subreddits? Why would they moderate starting subreddits?
Well, so if Reddit's system operates on what's called a karma system, so anyone can come and join the site in like 15 seconds and then submit a link into whatever area that they want. The thing is if it's useless, or if it's spam, or if it's self-promotion, it'll either get deleted by channel moderators because they're all very active, or it'll get downvoted by the user base because people who create accounts on Reddit get allowed to vote on anything, on any comment, on any submission. They can vote it up or they can vote it down. So it's like the whole Facebook likes or YouTube thumbs up, thumbs down, except, which I think YouTube stole from Reddit, but it's a living democratic kind of thing where anything you vote for live can get upvoted or downvoted in terms of relevancy. And so if your submissions keep getting upvoted, you build these points, these imaginary internet points called karma on Reddit, and that gives you like more strength or more power to interact on the site. So your postings will post higher, they'll have more staying power, and if you get to enough karma, then you're allowed to create subreddits of your own and be moderator of that. But they don't just let a brand new user do that. Otherwise you could create a new area for a new movie that they haven't created, or a new idea, create a subreddit and be the lord of that subreddit with a brand new account. You've never even participated on the site, right? So to stop that from happening, to make sure people have some credibility or some engagement in the community, they have that imaginary internet point system called karma for comments and submissions.
Wonder if it works.
It seems to. Like the CEO of Reddit just resigned because of a public protest on the site from various moderators and from as a backlash to, I guess, this one employee who was very active on the site. She was let go, and it turned out that the CEO wasn't even responsible for the debacle that caused her to be forced out of her position. I guess she resigned.
This is sources say, or you?
No, this is like on the site. Even the people responsible for creating the shitstorm admitted it after the CEO resigned. They were like, "Oh yeah, it was kind of my call. Oh well." They left the CEO out to dry. But that's a whole other story. If you look up Ellen Pao from Reddit, and there's so much more backstory there that I'm not going to get into because it's more soap operatic. So that's all the good side of Reddit. The downside is you can spend hours in Reddit just like link clicking because it's new content and it's literally the worst and the best of the internet. So like the worst, most depraved stuff is on Reddit. but also the coolest, most impressive, most amazing stuff is on Reddit. And same with the commenting people. Some people are just huge trolls, and you're just like, I can't believe someone would say that to another human being. And then other people, you're just like, that's the funniest thing I've ever read, times 3. You know what I mean?
Upvote.
You're an upvote. So yeah, use Reddit. Become part of that community. Just don't get sucked down the Reddit hole because it can be addictive. So you need to moderate your Reddit time so that you have more time to yourself just to generate ideas.
That's true. So if you're in a certain state where there's not so much brain muscle being flexed, you could get atrophy.
Can you clench your jaw and make your forehead vibrate?
No.
No? It makes it look like you're working at your brain.
There you go.
That's what it looks like when your brain's exercising.
All right.
Yeah, so in terms of inspiration for ideas, I think I had a conversation with either you or with one of our guys here at the shop, and it was talking about how music can inspire you in terms of helping. Say you're sitting there, you're like, I have to be creative now. I have to come up with stuff. And you're like just not feeling motivated, you're not feeling inspired, and you don't want to distract yourself from being able to engage, right? Because the inspiration can strike. So I told him that I use music. Whenever I'm writing, I'll put on an album or a couple of albums on a playlist, and the thing is that I choose instrumental music because as soon as you go to music with lyrics, your brain, like 2 parts of your brain start trying to bring it in. It's you're taking in the harmony and percussive elements, but then you're also trying to take in the words with your more, I would say, your logical brain, like that takes in words and analyzes them. So it can become distracted.
Well, it makes any situation, in my opinion, we talked about that today too, better. Depending, of course, on the music and if you're into it, but listening to a wide variety of music, I think, flexes your brain.
Yeah.
So I try to, and my daughter, I try to expose her to like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, as much of a...
Even 1800s and 1700s music.
Totally. Right? Some classical, yeah. She loves classical, actually. She dances like this.
It's good stuff.
But it's pretty cool. The point is that exposing yourself to a wide variety of music gets your comfort level changes a little bit, and so does your ability to think of things in new lights. So we were listening to some Shuggie Otis.
Earlier tonight.
Or today, and it was so cool because it put the whole place in a really cool environment. Like it
changed the vibe. It brought it up, right?
Yeah,
so it was a little bit more joyous or exciting to do the work we were doing.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. You, like Adam said, you can change the type of music. So if I have something like important to do and I want to be driven to keep at it, then I might put on something progressive,
some heavy metal,
some chunky heavy metal music that it just keeps me engaged and rocking along. Whereas if I want something a little lighter, like some classical or some even like symphonic type like soundtrack music, I find a lot of times I think the reason I like it is because I find it emotionally engaging. Like a lot of that music is written to highlight emotional points in a film score, or if it's like a concept album, like a progressive concept album, then it is taking you through these different emotional highs and lows. So you can't help but you might be engaged in something completely different, but the emotional sweep takes you on this range of your own emotions so that you never know. It's like knocking on a bunch of doors, and maybe two out of the 10 doors answers with a good idea.
And it could be a very inspirational journey.
Yeah, often. Well, anytime that you feel pressured or you feel hopefully self-pressured to come up with something, the best feeling in the world, the worst feeling in the world is to be like, oh, I gotta come up with something out of nothing. And then the best feeling in the world is after you finally found the inspiration, you hooked onto it, and it didn't shake you loose, and you actually managed to get the concept or the idea or the dialogue or whatever it is down on paper or down in a file so that it exists. And the best feeling is to be able to read it the next day and be like, that is awesome.
So you
that
can
is
almost
totally worth pursuing.
You could almost say that inspiration is another way of reframing a situation. So, oh my God, you know, there's a problem, or I got to come up with something, like you were just mentioning. And I listen to this song, and it's inspiring, and it changes my view or perception on the scenario, which then, you know, allows me to reframe a situation.
Yeah, and that reframing is like, you've heard the phrase "stuck in a rut," and that's, to me, stuck in a rut is like anytime you're engaging in some deep brain process, you're digging in. And if you get stuck in a rut, it's like I've gotten wedged somewhere and I can't get out. I have no ideas, but I feel like I'm also paralyzed. And so what the music does is, by taking you on that emotional journey, even if it's mini, it shakes you out. It's like shaking you out of the ruts. You're able to get out of that hole and at least reframe or re-engage from a slightly different perspective that maybe won't dead end you or send you into a rabbit hole. And thus you're able to just get another perspective. Sometimes just having another perspective on anything, on any idea, when you feel you've hit a roadblock, is tremendously helpful. And yeah, if you're too emotionally engaged, you can't get outside yourself to get that additional perspective. That is what friends are for, right? Put the idea in front of a friend. Hey, read this poem I just wrote.
Or that's what the idea show is for.
Yeah, that's why you should be here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. That's why you should be emailing us your comments, your questions, your ideas to the idea show.
And if you hear
gmail.com
that you really like on the show,
yeah,
write us, and it could definitely be a good start to bringing that idea into reality.
Yeah, if you want help with your idea to help bring it to reality, we actually have a lot of good ideas, connections, and resources with people, places, and things.
Various projects
that can,
many projects in various stages of development
that can help get your idea turned into reality. And we're also interested in connecting with other people who want to help make ideas a reality. So all we know is that it takes teamwork and it takes commitment.
And we do have commitment. We do have teams.
So all we need is the engagement with people, and we've had a little bit of engagement. We've gotten lots of good feedback from our existing audiences so far. We're hoping to get a bit more, and as time goes on, then we should get into, like, I think, doing a live engagement where we can have our audience swat ideas and concepts with us live.
Yeah, we're gonna have some guests too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So since we're coming down to the last 10 minutes here,
are we?
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun. So we are going to be having our first guest on, I believe, next week.
Yeah.
We might have 2 guests on, but for sure we'll be having a single guest. I think he said it's cool to announce it, so unless he cancels on us, we'll be having Christian Blaze from the upcoming project Death Row Democracy. He is one of the writers and directors, along with his wife Crystal, and they've created this amazing project, which is all about Bitcoin and decentralization and
it's pretty cool
set in the future. It's pretty cool. I've seen a rough cut, and it looks pretty neat. So he'll be on to talk about that project and to talk about the idea of decentralization and the idea of the future, how we're going to apply both currency and just the concept of decentralization of power in general and what that means.
These cryptocurrencies, I think, are really cool because, and I'm really new at it, but I know that they don't have hefty bank fees. And, you know, if you're going to be spending money here and there,
yeah,
you know, you're gonna have to spend those bank fees. But I think more and more people are starting to have alternative ways to paying for things.
Yep.
Like, I'm not sure if it's Virgin, but they're
yeah,
now
Virgin started accepting Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, right? So
it's growing because people.
And there's this Litecoin stuff.
There's Litecoin, Darkcoin, Dogecoin, Namecoin. There's a whole bunch of spin-off digital currencies that I'm pretty sure are still rooted in Bitcoin. But what it's shown is that the popularity of decentralized currencies, because the problem is right now we have a currency monopoly. Like, you can't spend any other currency than like US dollars or Canadian dollars in the respective countries. They won't accept anything other than what are called debt notes. And that's pretty much the same worldwide, except for maybe 2 or 3 countries. They all issue not actual money, they all issue what are called debt notes or IOUs. And they're all issued now by central banking authorities as opposed to like a currency that's tied to like a precious metal that has actual value. It's all paper or electronic currency that has no tangible value. It's just based on faith and credit. So the problem is that the authorities defend that monetary system, which is debt-based, and they tend to clamp down on any alternative currencies that come up, even ones like the Liberty dollar that were tied to real metal, like silver, right? The Liberty dollars came out and they were actually tied to silver, and the FBI shut that whole operation down because they were like, we don't like competition with our debt notes.
Well, I think it has something to do with the perception that somebody has of the value of silver, and if you actually print it, then it actually means that there's some tangible value of that silver.
Yeah.
And then if you put $50 on the coin,
yeah,
right, or whatever dollar, that sign is trademarked, if I'm not.
Well, a dollar is actually a unit of measurement for silver, right? A silver dollar, I'm pretty sure, was meant to be like an ounce.
Right.
Like that was the standardized measurement. I could be wrong.
So now that it's fluctuating, you can't necessarily.
Well, they just took the term dollar and applied it. This is the thing: is because it's paper money, because it doesn't have any tangible value, not attached to anything. There's more money that's been printed in society on the planet than has ever existed before, and yet for all the money that's been physically printed, it still is not enough to pay the total of all the debts that exist on the planet. Compound interest has actually created more debt than there exists the physical currency to pay back all the debt, and that's a fact. So
you could almost say that debt is a form of
indentured servitude or slavery. That's an idea for another idea.
There you go.
The conspiratorial idea. Yeah, no, unfortunately, that's the facts of the world we live in, because people have decided to accept compound interest as like an acceptable.
But you know what is another form of currency is the ability to generate ideas.
See, ideas are limitless currency, because even though the value fluctuates in each idea, just like Bitcoin is always fluctuating, there's some stability in the ability to consistently create ideas that don't suck, right? And that's an art form.
Yeah, there you go.
We're all about the life-affirming habits. So trying to build new habits, like exercising your brain, coming up with a few ideas each day. I think 10's a bit much, but if you can come with 3, even 5 good ideas.
Is it sustainable?
10 ideas a day is not really sustainable.
It's tough.
It's rough and tough.
Really, really tough.
Not to
I'm
discourage
struggling
people.
with 1 a day, and some people are watching or might be like, "Oh, this is amateur hour," but it's like, for me, I guess it has to do with how much time you actually spend doing that.
Yeah.
But I try to dedicate certain parts of my morning to. I got into this habit of thanking stuff, which I thought was really important because it's a coping mechanism. You said with like everything in this
appreciation,
world,
yeah, helps you feel better.
And not that it helps me feel better, but it helps me put things into perspective,
which makes you feel better.
Which could make me feel better.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's along with that, I'm trying to really come up with some ideas. I came up with a couple of really interesting ones, but we'll mention it on the show, on the next show, or the show after, or the show after that.
Do you know what's interesting is the 2, maybe 3 biggest places I find people come up with ideas in their own homes. Not the living room in front of the TV, believe it or not.
I don't know if I believe this stat. But
okay, no, this isn't a stat. This is a stat I'm pulling out of my rear. This is just my opinion.
Okay.
Asterisk. In the shower, in the bathroom in general. People are either in the shower or on the can, but more often in the shower. For whatever reason, there's a Reddit subreddit called Shower Thoughts, which are like the deep thoughts of the Reddit community of ideas that come to you in the shower. So take lots of showers, come up with lots of ideas or thoughts.
Yeah.
And then the kitchen, obviously, because you're doing a lot of creative stuff in the kitchen, so you'll have
right before bed.
And then in the bedroom, right before bed, surprisingly, your brain's offloading, looking at all these things.
You got to wake up, fumble around, look for a pen. Hopefully not wake up the wife and baby.
That's why you need an app called Nighttime Idea Thoughts.
That you just click the button and you put it in. No, that's dictation.
Where you click, yeah, no, it should be like click the idea, it constructs, it lists 50 possible starter things for an idea, and then you just piece on different widgets. That's so lazy. No, the best thing you can do is have a pad of paper and a pen and a little nightlight beside your bed, so that whether it's before going to bed, in the middle of the night, or first thing when you wake up, you can write down whatever it is, and then it's real.
So there you go.
All right. So I think we're gonna sign off, wind down.
Out of time,
Yeah, we're out of time for this week. Thank you so much for joining us on the 4th episode of The Idea Show. We didn't introduce ourselves at the beginning, but at this point you should know that I'm Paul Verge, and
I'm Adam Dodds.
And we'll join you next time, 6 p.m. Wednesday.
Join in next week for sure, because we've got a really cool guest, Christian Blaze.
August 5th.
Previously mentioned.
Christian Blaze, deathrowdemocracy.com is his site. Check out all those YouTube channels that we mentioned. We'll put a link down below in the description. And let us know, comment, let us know what inspires you. If it's music, if it's reading, if it's sitting under a tree and meditating, we want to know and we want to talk to you. All right. Have a great one, guys.
Peace, guys.
Bye.